Meeting to order for August the 19th, 2008. Mr. Russell, would you please give the blessing?
Father, we thank you for those that are gathered. We thank you for their time that they've given up, Father. We ask your blessing upon them. We ask that the citizens of the town realize the commitment that they've made, and may they give more good input and less criticism. Father, I just ask that your direction be known for St. John, and that each time they vote and speak, be within your will. We ask it in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Consent agenda, John.
Approve the minutes of the regular meeting of August 5th, 2008, and appropriation ordinance 08-1908 in the amount of $11,548.79.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or opposed say no. Is there any citizen comments this evening? That's not great. Wait on the honest. Okay. Administration, John.
I don't have anything else. You guys have something?
Is there any questions for John?
I have a question. Did we actually complete and implement all the recommendations from Adams Brown Bear Hall's audit report? Have those all been done now?
Pretty much. I'd have to double check everything, but we, at the time that they did it, we were going through. There is one thing that I need to visit more with Mel about, and that's the laws have changed on the cell phones. You know, so we're going to have to show some kind of taxable income on their wages. And I visited with Vicki quite a bit on that. We just need to get that lined out in the handbook.
But otherwise, everything else is their recommendations on them.
All that we can. And again, there's some, she wants to come probably next week or next meeting to go over that audit report with you.
Okay, fire department, Leonard.
Not anything right now, Jill.
Is there any questions for Leonard this evening? Thank you, Leonard. Police department, Sonny,
I don't have anything.
do you want to discuss the grass situation, what you and Mel discussed, or do you want Mel to do that?
Mel can do it.
Mel can do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever he comes back here, we'll have him do it. Is there any questions for Sonny?
How's the first couple of days of school going?
Very good.
Stop signs.
And the traffic is abiding by the stop signs, and we just haven't had any violations. I think they're used to it by now.
Legal, Don?
Oh.
Is there any questions for Don this evening?
Did we look at the ordinance on those vehicles? I thought we were going to put a change on that.
I didn't get it right, so I'll bring it next time.
There is any business this evening?
I was on vacation last week, so.
I would be with.
I can go with
Should we
it.
go check on it? He got a call on his cell phone, so.
I mean, I can introduce Ray.
Okay, that's fine. We can just
Uh,
do that.
We've got here tonight Greg Wright. Greg has been our consultant for the city for electrical service for probably the last 6 years. What were we renegotiating?
Yeah.
5 or 6. 5 years ago, we renegotiated the contract with Midwest Energy and
Greg, you can
got rid of Westar. And so he's been our consultant on that transaction. And he's been consulting us on the transition with Midwest for other cities, Stafford, Sterling, and Larned, and Elm. He's been the consultant for those cities too, doing the transition. Their contracts expired in 2008, and so they've been on, Stafford's gone on the contract with Midwest Energy. The other cities have gone on some contract with Kansas Power Pool. we might ask him to address some issues about, our contract expires in the year 2010. So we need to start looking at various alternatives, probably in a year and a half or two, and maybe you can address some of the issues we need to be looking at, whether we want to join the Southwest or the Kansas Power Pool as a member fairly soon. I go to some of the meetings already with Stafford, Greg attends those meetings regularly, so it might be beneficial to think about joining that organization. But he's here tonight primarily for the wind energy proposal that we've been talking about. Just a little background before some of you don't know, Greg used to be formerly employed with Westar Energy, and he was the head of their, I guess, wholesale division or whatever in pricing, and so he's the one that basically wrote the St. John contract 27 years ago. But he also had experience in developing the wind power project at the Jeffrey Energy Center, so he's been there and done that. He kind of did the groundwork for that first one in Kansas. So I think he's got the expertise to at least speak to us about what's going on now and what we should be looking for and kind of the price comparisons. So is that good enough?
Pretty good. I forgot about some of that stuff. Well, that's appreciate it. And I think most of you guys know me because been here a couple of times. But yeah, the only thing I wasn't clear on when you talked about the wind proposal.
Well, a proposal. I mean, we don't have a definite one. We're here talking about maybe doing a proposal.
Okay. I was gonna say, that would
We don't have a specific.
That was a piece of information.
No, you got everything.
Okay. Yeah, I thought what I'd do tonight is there's been a lot of discussion on wind energy, but just in energy in general. And as Don said, which I'm glad he pointed out, is that the supply contract that you guys have is, we've been notified, it's been terminated, and everybody, the other 4 cities that were similarly situated have all terminated. You guys had a longer agreement, but you've since received notice, and so June 1st of 2010, we need to supply it. As you said, a couple of years. We probably need to start pretty seriously, not this time next year, in order to have some sort of a secondary arrangement with a new supply in place. And it doesn't have to be a single supply, but whatever we're going to do for 2010, we need to have arrangements made mid-year next year, because there's a lot of things, transmission, there's a lot of things that need to be done. So that process will have to take place. There's nothing you have to do today. We're going to talk a little bit about your existing contract, just to make sure. I mean, I know you guys are familiar with it, but just to make sure everybody understands how it works. When I say the contract, how you're being charged by Midwest Energy, and the reason that's important is because if you do something today with wind generation, which the contract allows, you have to see how that would be impacted by this contract. If you do something in the future, that'll be determined on based on what the supply arrangement will do reach. Well, one thing we know for certain is what we have now won't be there in 2 years. Okay, that's not going to roll over. That's not going to happen. That's the only thing we know. What it's going to be, we don't know. As Don said, we have seen the other cities just started out on what they did. You guys, not being the first out there is probably good. So, actually, you guys are in pretty good shape right now. Pretty good setup. But I thought I'll go ahead and hand these out. This is more of a discussion contracts, and so we have not. It's not necessarily a presentation. I'm not necessarily teaching. I'm got these are some notes that I basically have, and I want to touch base with you guys. But any questions? I'd rather have it that way. If you guys have questions, chime in, and then I'll try to address the best I can some of the wind issues. And I think we talked about it a little bit. Maybe a year ago, or Bill might have talked about it when that we had a conference on community wind, and I believe you guys passed the ordinance on the interconnect, which you guys were one of the first cities to do that, and that's good. A lot of cities are following suit as of anywhere in the last few months. So go ahead and hand this out, and again, these are just notes that we can walk through, and there's a couple of graphs and charts and things like that I want to talk off of.
Garland, you want one?
Garden lawn.
Leonard?
Just to start out, not necessarily in here, but again, the main focus, I got it.
Leonard, you want one? Fine, okay.
The wind is a topic, but it could be any kind of generation, and basically, we refer to it as distributed generation. DG, distributed generation, means it's generation outside of a central plant, whether it's wind is basically the fuel source, if you will, or the power, the source of the energy. It could be, any other kind of distributed generation. A lot of the stuff would apply to that, but essentially, wind is a topic. I attended, and several other cities attended and I attended on behalf of St. John for this Community Wind and Renewable Energy Interconnection Operation Workshop last year. Kansas Municipal Energy Agency hosted that, put it on. And from that, we signed an interconnect agreement that would lay the groundwork if anybody wanted to install wind generation or any distributed generation in your territory. So that's still in place, and that kind of lays the groundwork. But when we talk about wind energy in the pure sense, you basically have three types of wind. You've either got the wind farms, the large installations that you maybe see out on I-70, some out in western, a little farther west here. Those are the big several hundred megawatt wind farms. Those are usually owned by a group of investors or a group of investor-owned utilities or cooperatives or some sort of large ownership, and that's usually not the end user that owns it. They own it and then they sell pieces of it. That's just see out on the interstate. The other thing you have is what's called community wind. That's the terminology that's commonly referred to now. Community wind is when you have a smaller installation, and that's within a smaller community or a municipal utility where they may put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go to 5, 10 megawatts within the community. So it's owned and operated by the community. The use of the community. That's called community, and that's what we call that community wind. That's essentially what this conference was about. The other generators, anywhere from zero type of installation, might be a consumer owned and operated. That would be one of your customers or any customer of a supplier that just puts it in within behind their meters, we call it, for their own personal use, to be used to offset their own purchases from whoever their supplier is, and for our discussions here, you as a utility. So those are the three. You have the wind farms, the community winds, and then I'll just call that individually owned wind generation. When that comes up, so a community like St. John has all of those to be concerned about. In general, anytime there's a wind farm going up or wind installation, the person that's installing it, owning it, has a stake in it, and the next person up the line, their direct supplier, is concerned about it. Not concerned in a bad way, but just concerned, has issues with it and have to be addressed. Usually the supplier on up the stream it's not as big of an issue because it's continued to get diluted, so to speak, down the way. But like if one of your customers that you need to be concerned about when they're interconnecting to your system, where maybe your supplier, which is currently Midwest Energy, somebody else in the future maybe, may not even theoretically see it because it's behind the customer's meter, which is one of your customers. If you put it in and own an operating portfolio or mix, well then your supplier has an issue with that. Because it's changing your load. As part of your generating of the next individual, the next direct customer is changed. And that's why people, it's really not as easy as a process as it initially seems, because there's some things that need to be considered, is because when you put a wind generator in, it changes the load shape that the original arrangement was structured under. So if you put one in as a community wind, as I talked about, Midwest Energy would see you differently, because the wind's going to be coming and going at different times of the day. I've got some graphs in there that we want to talk about. But, and then again, if the wind farms out on the interstate are in there, the transmission supplier or the regional suppliers are concerned about that, because you got 400 or 500 megawatts swinging load on and off the system. So they're concerned. So it's, again, the next person up the line as far as the supplier-customer relationship is the one that wants to know about it and wants to be able to deal with it. So that's why you as a community need to be aware, because one, it may be something you want to consider. It's also something your customers may want to consider. And either one of those scenarios you need to be involved with and aware of. The other thing is the big farms are out there, and that could be a potential source for you in the future. Could be today too, but also, as we'll discuss, you do have this contract for another couple of years, and I want to make sure we want to explain how that works. So, again, when I refer to community, I have a few things in here. Some of the things that you need to be consuming, individual or wind farm. Talk about that would need to be discussed whenever you do it. Again, define that, who owns the power, what size, sizes, the ones you see on the high, 3 megawatts per turbine. The little ones you see on the highway, or it could be 1.5. People's backyards or in commercial installations could be a few hundred kW. Or even smaller. City, and as your advisor, the economics of the turbine are very important to consider, and I'm going to go over why. And you have to use as a community. Why it's not as easy as it initially seems, or it's not as easy as you do it on the back of an envelope when you do a net present value of an investment or what have you. There's a lot more to it than that. And then you have to look at what impact it's going to have on your system, and then also what kind of backup you want to have. The windmills of old, when they're out in the fields, when they're talking about, there's various open water and stuff if they weren't running, and you kind of stored the water up and it was fine. But now nobody's wanting to be in the dark for the most part. So generally, when the wind's not blowing, something else needs to be in place. So you kind of have to have another level of source in order to have wind generation. It's for a community that's providing power to customers. In the next section, I basically talked a little bit about, in general, about your current contract. And if this is a review for all of you, which like I said, probably is, but it's a few things that are important. While right now your contract would allow you to bring wind generation, you couldn't bring in another outside resource for a majority of your load, because you purchased a firm full requirements for majority of your load. But you're allowed to bring a renewable resource in there. But it doesn't change if you do that, it doesn't change the terms of the contract. Essentially, you have a demand charge, an energy charge, a fuel adjustment charge, and a customer charge portion of your electric bill right now to the city. Those are all things that are going to impact you. I'll go through those. Let's walk on through. I might refer to this graph in a little bit later in addition, but this next thing is this is your hourly load for the city. If you look at that, that's every hour of the year where you sit, how much load you're buying from your supplier on an hour-to-hour basis. As you can see, you're right around 1,500 kW, drop down in those March, April, May time period, your load drops down, as low as it gets. And then, of course, in the summer, what's to be expected, is when you peak pretty dramatically, and then you drop off there again in the winters. So that's a typical city load profile, very typical, but that gives you an idea, because I'm going to refer to the different time periods later. So just make sure you know kind of when you're peaking and when you're not. Now, one of the things that you could do is you do have some price differentials of the wholesale electric market. And I talked a little bit about this when we were here talking about your rates a while back. But generally, your more expensive power is during this peak time, because everybody else's load is peaking at the same time. So that's when the demand for the power is the highest. So there you go. You're going to have price demand. Yeah.
Just to read the graph, are these lines that go all the way down to zero when there's a power failure?
Either power failure, generating, could be, or could be a meter. They do also occasionally have a meter will zero. So they may make a meter check and change a meter for that's just an hour to hour. So those were zeros. What exactly was happening, I can't tell. I did double check those, but that is what it is. It shows your load going to zero. This is data from Midwest Energy. So what they what they are, I don't really know. My guess is there's some sort of an outage. Now, generally, you wouldn't expect when you're generating for certain times, curtailable times, you wouldn't expect your load to go down below 2250 because that's all you're required to generate to. You've got a firm supply. So these times, I would assume you had some sort of power outage.
Like the ice storm or something.
Yeah, that was probably.
Pretty obvious right there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you've got so you're gonna those. I would kind of ignore those right now because that's not part of the contract. Just so you guys can see this on this next couple pages, I wanted to show this to you because the conversation or questions may come up. But right now, if you look at the next two bills, I don't know if anybody ever sees these, but these are kind of how you get billed. If you see, you have a base contract of 1,800 kW. You pay for not less than 1,800. That's an arrangement that Don negotiated when the transfer came over here. It was higher than that in the off-peak, but if you go back to the previous graph, when you're down below 1,800, all those times it's below 1,800, you're paying more than you can use. So the lower that number was, the better. And originally it was a high number, and that was part of the negotiations that Don obtained, was able to get that number down a little bit. But 1,800 is what it is. So if you look at this bill, this is a bill for November or December of 07. It shows an 1,800 kW off-peak demand. If you look at that top, and then your kilowatt hours is 879,980 kilowatt hours. That's referred to as the energy. For those that aren't familiar with that, you have demand, and I'll call that demand and capacity. Then you have an energy, and this is the simpler bill. Now, if you look at the demand charge on the next page, just so you can get an idea. Is how this works. 1,800, you pay $8.95, and you pay that whether you use it or not. All right. So, like on the example here, you happen to hit 1,800 just coincidentally. I probably should have picked one up. Probably the previous month would have been like 1,500, and you would have paid for 1,800. Okay, you would have been billed for 18. You're always going to be billed for 1,800. And then the energy was, and so that's at $8.95. That's that particular bill. It was $16,000, which is a little over a third of the bill. The energy is the next line. That's 2.2 cents per kilowatt hour. So keep that in mind. 2.2 cents per kilowatt hour is what your energy charge is, and that's basically whatever you're using. If you got lights on in the city, you're drawing through the meter and it's spinning the big meter, and that's the kilowatt hours. You're paying 2.2 cents a kilowatt hour. You're also paying for the same amount of energy, you're paying a fuel adjustment, which is an adjustment Midwest Energy. That's 0.8 of a cent per kilowatt hour for this particular month. That number will change throughout the time of the year based on their price. But for this particular month, your energy costs basically 3 cents. All right? And that number, again, 3 cents is what your energy paid. Your demand was $1,600 or $1,600, $8.95 kW, whether you use it or not. So then that's how your bill comes up with, it's 42,000. Now a lot of times people will take the 42,000 and divide it by the energy and come up with the price per kilowatt hour like 5 cents. So that's a fallacy sometimes when I get into the wind. A lot of people will grab that 5 cents, say my average cost for wind when you factor in the investment is like 4 cents, and I'm offsetting 5 cents. So I'm saving 20% every kilowatt hour. When you really, this particular month, you're offsetting 3 cents a kilowatt hour from the city. Don't really do anything for the demand. 3 cents a kilowatt hour from the city. So, because you don't really do anything for the demand under this particular contract. So that's important to point that out here. If you scroll over to the next bill, this is a summer bill, and this one looks a little different. It gets a little more complex, a little more complicated because you have different hourly peaking arrangement. But essentially, in the summer, see if you look at that, there's a 3,300 kW. You look about halfway down. That's your peak for this particular month. That's where, in that first graph I showed you where you're spiking. That's where you set quite a bit higher peak, almost double from what you set in December. And then this energy is an assortment of energy throughout different times of the day, and it's a different pricing mechanism. But if you go to the next page, you have off-peak energy, you have OPA, which is on-peak available, on-peak available 3, 2, it's all kind of hodgepodge of stuff that was negotiated. But if you look, you had for your off-peak, which is called WSM energy, that was the same energy we had in December. That's at $22 or 2.2 cents. And all the rest of that is about 10 cents a kilowatt hour, 10, 11, as you can see, that's the expensive stuff. That's that peaking energy that you pay a premium for. And that is that summer high-priced energy that we're all anxious to try to avoid that with some other fuel sources we could. Okay, so I'm all about that. And then you can see the fuel adjustment for all of that energy comes in at 1 cent. Okay, so they add a penny to all those classes. So then you look at your bill there in the summer, it's 73,000, and you divide that by the total kilowatt hours, your bill might be 6 cents for that summer, probably in that peak. So it's going to average higher because you got all this higher energy. Plus, if you look on the base capacity demand, it goes up to 2,250 kW. So in the 3 summer months, which is July, August, and September, they move that base up to 2,250, and they charge you a demand charge. And so you pay $20,137, and you basically pay that every single summer month, regardless of whether you use it or not. This particular month, you were over that. So you paid a premium, not a premium, but you paid $2.95 for everything above that. Okay? So that's how that worked. But if you would have, for some reason, had a really cool wave in August or that time, and your load would have been 1,500 kW, you would have paid for.
Because we're asking them to have that available to us.
You asked to have that available, and what that is, that's called the firm base capacity. So when they cut that, this expensive stuff, while one, it's expensive, it's also curtailable. So they can call it any time, and they do reprice it to even higher numbers than that. This is an aggregate of all the reprice numbers, but it may be $150, $200 at any time, and you can either buy it, or you can generate, or they can cut it. Other cities that had that arrangement would have to generate all the way down to 0. You guys will have to generate down to 2,250, okay? Because you bought that base. You paid the premium for it, you paid $20,000 to have it there. But that's as low as you'll ever have to go. But again, that's important to keep that in mind. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of it. If you look at the next chart, kind of to give you an idea of what's going on the basically you've had the same contract for a long time, but if you look, your cost per kilowatt hour on an average, this blue line, it kind of goes up and down, and it's kind of seasonal. If you kind of look, it's kind of up higher during the summer months, as we talked about, and it drops lower, but it's kind of, throughout the time, it goes up and down, and mostly based on seasonal. The red line, I took the annual average that out, but you can see your annual average cost has moved up from, just barely above 4 cents a kilowatt hour up to almost 6 cents a kilowatt hour. That's your annual average. Again, it's aggregate that summer, winter time. And,
Most of that is in the fuel charge, isn't it?
well, that's the only reason it changes. Everything else is fixed. The only thing, well, that's the only reason it changes that energy cost adjustment that I showed you. That has gone, that pass-through has gone from, they can change that based on their system average cost, and that has gone up. That and also that incremental pricing has gone up from what it might have been. We might have seen $70 to $80 power back here in 05 to anywhere from $150 to $200 power now. But we don't, again, we don't buy that much of it because it's just above the 2250. Everything below 2250 is tied to those prices, but the variable is the fuel adjustment. Which you guys have a fuel adjustment. As you remember, we put that in a few years ago, so you can pass those variances through. That's why we have that. So we got the prices going up. So you have a number of things that are going on here. That's why wind kind of picked up right now, is because not only you guys are probably seeing less price swings as others because of that base contract you have, but others are seeing a lot more swings. So immediately one of the things is wind, not only for cost savings, but the environmental benefit that it is, because it's a green power source. The next chart kind of gives you, again, I went ahead and plotted each year to kind of go, as you can see, that tracks with that previous slide as it's slowly gone up. Year 07 is certainly higher, and of course year 08 would be higher. Yeah, but I didn't have a full year, of course. So the higher prices are generally in the summer. And, good. Now this next slide here, the next page, I wanted to kind of what I was talking about. The blue line is basically your contract minimum that you've contracted to buy that much, and that's the 18 during those months. You're going to, underneath that blue line, you're going to pay, you're going to pay that demand charge for that much. And for that demand charge, it gives you the right to that cheap energy, that 2.5 to 3 cent energy up to that blue line. As you can see, almost every month except for the summer, those summer months, you're below that blue line for the most part. And, so you're basically buying all the energy you can, which is what the idea. That level was to get it down as low as possible. That level was to get it down as low as possible because we don't want to pay any more than we had to for that. You can, so you're doing a good job of that. But it shows you that, like for instance, if you look here, just in months you were down under that, so there was some more energy that. So to put an alternative. Could have taken at the cheaper rate. That 1800, but you just offset some of that cheaper energy. The 2250, you've got those spikes above there are the summer months. So that's considered peaking power that we'd certainly like to displace because you pay a premium for that. You take everything you can at the 2250 almost every. So if we put wind generation in, and I'm not talking about the physical installation or whatever, just the business side of it, the economic thing. As you can see, if the city were to put it in today, you're going to offset a lot of energy that you're kind of have the rights already cheap energy. You're just going to displace some of your cheap energy. If it's blowing and you're getting the wind generation, and I say if it's doing it during those peak summer months, that's good. You'll be And that's the game, or that's the challenge, is to have those things and at the time that the high price power is going. So we need to look at that. And what I've got later on here is some power curves and some wind profiles, so we can kind of talk about those a little bit and see how they work. And that's why, and you'll see, I think you'll see why, you know, it's a little bit more complicated to do the evaluation. But hope they're blowing, they're turning. Basically, if the city, this is looking at if the city owns the wind turbines, then you would have, we would have to evaluate if you set some expensive energy, and that's great. If you put them in, the biggest uncertainty right now is you don't know what you've got in 2 years. So we put them in today based on the economics of what I've just showed you is one thing, but 2 years from now we have no idea what we're going to have after that. So it's probably not the greatest time for the city to put them in regard to being about a year ahead of knowing what you're going to be taking in the future. Complex, a little more difficult too. So if you say, well, I want to put a megawatt or half a megawatt with the wind generation as community wind, then we have no idea what the impact is going to be under your new supply because we don't know what it is at this particular time. All would be going on is what others are getting. But you would have to decide whether you wanted to do the community wind aspect or buy a purchase power agreement. Purchase power agreement is a little bit easier to determine because you're basically not taking the risk, so to speak, of the wind blowing. You're buying the contract, and if you can buy it under the prices I've just went under, then it's a good deal. If you can't, then you don't want to take it. But that looks to a city or to anybody's mind, that looks more like a supply contract that we're used to having. Now with that, when you do a purchase power agreement, there's lots of things that you need to consider. One, you know, the price and everything that you normally consider on a supply arrangement, but also renewable energy comes with the energy and it comes with the green tax. And you may be familiar, you may not be familiar with green RECs or tax. All renewable energy to validate it as green has a certain number of credits that go with it. You can keep those, that way you can say you have green power, or you can sell them. There's a fluid commodity market for green tags, and people trade them all the time. So somebody who has wind generation, those wind farms for instance, they factor that value of those credits in their analysis of their financial analysis. So they might sell those to a green tag wholesaler who then will then sell them to different resources that are required, different communities, different states that have requirements to have so much green power. So you would then decide, well, do I want to keep my green RECs, my green tags, or sell them? That's something you decide. But it's becoming a pretty well established market. It just seems really, it's just kind of odd the way it works. But you also have the type of units, the size of units, the aesthetics to your community, all the kind of things you want, the ordinances of the community, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Tower ordinances. I'm not sure what if any of you have any ordinances, but generally, you know, it's, some communities consider them no different than a radio tower or that is, so you can decide whether you have any issues with that. Of energy to the system, if you have it outside the community, but it's outside your city limits, you have to put it on the grid, you have to be able to schedule it in, so there's those kind of issues you need to look at. So we'll come back to those, but I want to go, let's look at a little bit about some of the things about how this works. If you look at it, I'm just going to show you this, this is called a power curve for a wind turbine. A lot of people feel that they have 150 kW wind turbine, they're going to get 150 kW power out of them. And you will, under certain wind conditions, you can actually exceed 150 under the real high wind turbines. And the way to read that is just kind of go across there. You know, at 5 miles an hour, you get nothing. You're not getting any, they're not turning. And that's why you go down, sometimes you see these turbines not moving. Well, that's because it's not met a minimum wind speed. So this is an actual turbine that the plot was provided to me, that 9 miles an hour, they're getting out of 150 kW, you're getting about 5 kW as it's moving down. So you got to get up there to get to that peak period. You'd have to get somewhere around 35 miles per hour, and you're getting your 35 mile per hour wind. You're getting 100% of your power, and you can even, like for instance, get up to 160 at pretty high wind, 41 miles per hour wind, whatever. And then it tailors off a little bit, kind of has the wind curve is going to look similar to this, and that's just people will look at that and they'll say, okay, well, how much wind am I getting? So am I going to get 50% output? Basically, you just go to, in this particular thing, go to 75 kW, go over, and it's right around 21, 22 miles per hour. You're going to get half your output. Okay. So that's important to know and to think about. Now that can be changed, and turbines will, a couple factors will change that. One, you can, bigger blades, different type of units, things like that will be able to turn easier or maybe with less wind. And so these power curves will change based on tweaking you can do on turbines or change outs. So this particular one is just a 150 kW turbine they actually installed and did testing on. So I went ahead and did the wind data so we can look at this, because I think this is important to understand and be aware of when you go into considering wind. Again, a lot of people kind of have the idea that it's going to be cranking out the wind all the time. And sometimes they are. If you look at this is great band. This was provided by KSU Wind, KSU weather data. They had a site in Great Bend and Hutch. And I think I just provided Great Bend. It had a little higher wind, a little windier than Hutch. But if you look, this is an hour by hour throughout a certain period of time. Or actually, it's like 45-minute periods. They plotted the wind speeds throughout this year. And as you can see, you know, there's sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's as high as 50 miles per hour a couple times. Generally, in this particular period, the average was about 12 miles per hour. I think it is 12 miles per hour is what that is. That was the average wind speed. Again, there's a lot of hours that's lower. The red line there is plotted off the previous curve, saying, okay, well, how at 50 miles per hour or 50%, what's the wind speed? And it needs to be, so it's right around 18, 19 miles per hour. It's getting about 15% or 50% of the output of one of the turbines we were looking at. To get 96%, which I call basically consider full output of the turbine, it needs to be pretty close to 30 miles per hour. I just drew that line so you can see that there's some hours that you're getting full output, but there's a lot that you're not. So you need to be aware that you're not going to get your full output. So if you've sized it to match your load, you're going to need something else. If you've put in redundant units or larger, you're still going to need something else for the times it's down to 0. But you could certainly increase your, just need to do that for design.
So about the average amount of time, you're going to get 25 kilowatts out of 150
Right.
kilowatt.
Right. That's average. Now, if you look at the next graph, I want to hit. What I did was that graph's kind of hard to read, I think, when it's squiggly. So I went ahead and flattened that out, and I took the average month. I took that graph and took the average month by month. So I took what the average was each given month, just to give you an idea of where it is. Now that blue line, the blue line should look a little bit familiar. That's the load of the city. That's your load graph. If you look at the average monthly wind, I had the average yellow line. That was the one you were talking about. That was there. But if I did the average monthly curve, that's what it looks like right there. as you can see, the right axis is your wind speed, so 10 miles per hour, you know, kind of the average is about that 12 in there, but you had the highest in there in March, April, that's your high, probably obviously, windy months, but your July and August are kind of your lower months, that's when your highest peaks are. And again, that when you think about it, that's not a huge surprise in the fact that the reason your load's high, and the reason it's hot is because there's no wind, there's no breeze, and so you tend to have lower. So that just shows you that I mean, one of the things is it doesn't match up perfect. You know, it's just something that's got to be considered. This is a slide from the operator of Gray County Wind Farm, which is not too far from here, but it's out here on West Virginia. This is some data that they had in 2005 operating. They're a cooperative, they own it, and they just plotted some of this output as far as 1,622 hours. They had 0, and that was 18% of the year. Kind of matched up with what we saw earlier. They had out less than 11 megawatts for 32% of the year, and 6% of the time the output was less than half. And so then they had some swings on their loads, pretty high swings. This, I just included this. This is what they presented at the Community Wind Conference that basically kind of validated what we talked about a little bit ago, which is basically some of the issues that people are dealing with. There's a wind farm, and if you, okay, so now I'll go back to, if we, when I was first talking about kind of community wind, that's things you need to be aware of if we own the wind. If you buy into the wind, like you buy into a farm here, we're going to get, those purchase power agreements get derated accordingly. When the wind's not blowing, you're not getting out of your, you know, if there's no power being produced there, you're not getting your share. Or if 10% of the total output is, you're going to get 10% of your contract. Okay, so those are, that's some of the general overview, and I think that's the last I had on the slide there. Well, I believe so. And then if you look at if you break it down to a individual, put it in a wind generator, the reason I encourage us to pass the interconnect agreement is because you would basically take, all your rates were designed with a certain load profile in place. If you remember, we talked about that when I broke out the residential, commercial, industrial. The reason I did that is because we're able to go in there and say, okay, these are the type of customers that you're serving, and we know, we look at your load profile, the blue squiggly line here that I had, each one of those customers has a load profile as well. And we're able to say, okay, this is our load profile, our customer's load profile looks something like this, generally. The reason you look like this is because you have a whole bunch of customers who look like that. So if somebody goes in there and puts in some sort of distributed generation, doesn't matter what it is, they can change their load profile, you know. And if they're going to run whatever it is they've got, if they're going to run it during this time and drop that, usually the cities, it doesn't impact negatively. It's a fairly positive thing because you're, okay, we're not having to, we set our rates as a flat fee because we knew enough that this was what we looked like, so we were expecting that, so we priced it. If you change it, it changes the way we priced our product, so we need to change the way we price the product. Now again, like I said, if somebody came in and said, I'm gonna run some sort of generation during this time, it's okay because that's taking the more expensive time, and you've priced yours. You figured you're going to be serving that load there, and now you're not, so that's even better. But if somebody comes in and said, I'm going to come in here and bring some generation that's going to run during this time and not this time, then if you look back on the charts, and we're basically changed the load profile quite a bit, so what the rate we're charging isn't really appropriate or effective anymore. So the city then is in a situation where you need to possibly modify your rates to allow for some sort of interconnect. You don't have that situation now. That's why they had you pass that in place if that situation came up. And again, that's not necessarily related to wind, other than that's right now the kind of the current wind source that just comes on and off. Most people are out there running diesel generators in the winter, so it hasn't been a problem. If there is an interconnect, then and if that situation comes, I think that the city owes it to the consumers to let them know that we'll need to establish, the guidelines and what conditions and terms need to be undertaken in order to accommodate that. And that maybe would need to have some sort of a demand charge or some sort of an alteration of the rates. The way the rates are set up today doesn't really address having wind generation interconnected with you, as does your supplier with your rate. Although they've kind of protected themselves because they have that base demand. Okay, they probably wouldn't be as opposed to it at this particular time because you're paying the premium, and if you don't want to take the energy that you've reserved, then so be it. So that they've kind of got that at this particular time. They probably wouldn't be too concerned with it. But whoever you end up buying your power from in 2 years might say, okay, well, you got a wind farm or you got a wind contract. I need to know that, and I want to price my product accordingly because I'm going to go back and look at the same wind charts that we just looked at, and I'm going to say this is when the wind's going to blow, right here, and you're not. Now that doesn't always, like I said, that doesn't fall. It's not always like this, but this is. So that's some of the things we need to be concerned about and we'll need to address. And I think that the city probably needs to do that sooner rather than later. Not tonight, but before too long we need to, I think, put a part of your interconnect to put some sort of a rate that adjusts for people that have connected generation, just to cover, so you cover your cost, and then the people they can calculate the benefits of any generation connected to their system based on that economics, and not after the fact, not after they've already been installed. And so, anyway, does anybody have any questions or comments? No?
What have you seen with the cities that have their new contracts? How is wind addressed in some of these new contracts?
Well, currently, it's really not. The couple of the cities that stayed in the Midwest had a short term, 1 year. So it wasn't addressed because it wasn't going to come into play within that time. The other ones that are in the power pool, basically the power pool would then absorb all the generation. So they're charged the same rate whether they have generation or not. So it wouldn't behoove the city to come in and put a generator right now because they don't get any benefit from it at this particular time. Now the pool itself is looking at it, and they're looking at both wind generation and other renewable sources. They've bought into some hydropower and what have you. They're combining it. So if the city were wanting to do it and were part of the pool, they would then work in conjunction with the pool to see how it fits. So there's nothing that prohibits it, but if every city went in and put some in there, it would dramatically impact the arrangement the pool has. So the pool would have to have some oversight. Now that's just those two arrangements. There's other kinds of contracts out there. If somebody's got one, and basically generation, they're just priced basically whatever the arrangements that are going to be priced to them from a wholesale supplier is going to be factoring that in.
Would you briefly tell them what Westar is at right now with their 20-year agreement that they're proposing?
Well, they would, They basically have, they've offered a 20-year agreement, full requirements, and, but it hasn't been approved by FERC yet, so it's in the holding period of mode right now. But essentially what they're saying is theirs, you buy all your resources from them at a demand price, which is fairly high, $14 or so per kW, and it goes up, it's based on their peak for that month. And then the energy charge is system average energy charge. And then generation, if it's like your diesel generation or combined cycle, whatever it is, that can't be, that is run under their direction. It's basically, they buy it if you choose to sell it to them. Under purchase agreement, you don't sell the actual hardware, but you sell the power. And they pull aside, you're buying full requirements from them, and you pay the demand and energy charge. You can put the renewable in there, but the downside is, unless you're sure it's gonna spin all month, you're gonna be hit with that demand charge anyway.
Yeah. So
And you're gonna do the same thing that you got now, because you're gonna be paying that $14, unless it's running all the time during the peak. So you could avoid it if it's just coincidentally blowing, but if there's an hour that it doesn't blow, then you're gonna set the demand.
Have you looked at the KMEA proposal, the Energy Pool 3, compared it to the Kansas Power Pool? Is that working out for them?
They haven't, we've had them out there to do it. We haven't seen, that would be one we don't know exactly what they'd offer right now, so.
Have you seen their track record though this year to see how they compare to
No,
Westar and
no,
no one else went with them? Any of your cities didn't go with them?
no. But they have, there's not an MP3 yet.
Okay.
Just the two,
The two.
there's Kansas City and then the other one out west, out in the
Yeah,
middle.
well,
And I'm not sure that one's going yet.
oh, then,
I don't believe it's up and running yet. Maybe, but I haven't seen what the results of that are.
This place in Missouri that, we talked about that, maybe you may have seen on the news, they're, quote, getting all their power from wind. And did you ever find out what they do as far as when the wind blows? They surely have to have backup somehow or another, and,
Yeah.
from another source.
They're buying it from the pool in that arena, and they get an hourly incremental price. That's what they've got coming to them. Or they can provide their own or buy from anywhere, but that's where they're getting right now. And then they sell back excess, if there is excess, at an incremental, at a highest incremental price. So if it's blowing a lot, March and April when the price is down, they're not getting much for it. Which is generally, again, when it's blowing the most, and their loads are low, so usually that's when they're selling mostly back. But that's how it works. So.
under our current contract, if we decided to do a wind thing, even though it would hurt our low cheap power, if we have excess power, if I recall our agreement, we cannot sell it. Midwest said they would not take it back. Isn't that correct?
Well, they said they normally want to bank it. They want to bank it. I mean, if you're long, they won't save it and just add it up and apply it later. They won't do that. But if we're selling back, we would exercise the ability to sell them back at the incremental at their system average price, which is usually low.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually when you sell them back, you're not getting the benefit of the high price power, because the high price power comes when it's really hot and you need all you got. You'd be taking it all yourself. When you're selling back, it's usually when the load's low and it's windy and prices are low. But it does offset. You can offset it. As well as a consumer that installs it on your system. That's something that we would do. Initially, you would buy back the power that they were long, but you wouldn't buy it back at your